You see, sometimes people are so lost, their condition and their state so broken, that we can get to a place where we cease to see the humanity of the other person.
Stepping into the land that Jesus knew so well and walking where he walked has been an incredible experience.
This is Living Truth.
Welcome to a special edition of Living Truth in Israel. This beautiful country holds a wealth of historical and spiritual significance for us as the biblical land of God's people and the home of Jesus Christ when he walked on the earth. Join us as we visit sites such as Capernaum, the Garden of Gethsemane, the Sea of Galilee where Jesus walked on water and fed the 5,000, and experience the living reality of Christ today as we study the Word of God together. This is Living Truth.
This message from Brett McBride was recorded on the shore of the Sea of Galilee and is called From Fear to Faith. This is Living Truth.
If you have your Bibles, please turn to Mark chapter 5. Take courage, it is I am, don't be afraid. We left Jesus and his disciples on the Sea of Galilee in the midst of a storm when the wind and the waves were against them. 3 a.m., their strength giving out, Jesus goes out to them and says, take courage, it is I am, don't be afraid. And as I studied Mark 6, I was thinking to myself, why did the disciples have to be forced to get into the boat and go towards Bethsaida? And I think we find the answer in Mark chapter 5. At the conclusion of Mark chapter 4, Jesus and his disciples are sailing across the Sea of Galilee. And it's when Jesus is asleep on a cushion in the boat, and there's such a furious squall on the lake that they're starting to sink. And the disciples come to Jesus and they say, Master, don't you care that we're going to die? And Jesus, disturbed from his nap, gets up and he says to the wind and the waves, quiet, be still, and everything becomes quiet and still, which is a complete miracle because even if the winds stopped, the waters would certainly still churn for hours afterwards. But when Jesus speaks, when the one who breathes stars into existence commands the wind and the waves, it gets completely calm. And the disciples are overwhelmed. At the end of chapter 4, we see them say, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. But it begs the question, why was that wind and the waves coming against Jesus and his disciples so strong? What was behind those wind and waves? And we start to get an indication in chapter 5, verse 1. Let's pick up the story. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. What we're going to look at and how this story breaks down for me is the family crisis, the community's response, and the coming of the Christ. The last time the disciples had journeyed across the lake was to the region of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus charted a course for them to Bethsaida in Mark chapter 6, that was the previous experience they had on the other side. That's why they were probably a little hesitant to go over to the other side of the lake, because they had encountered some pretty drastic spiritual warfare, and they were at a low point in Mark chapter 6. Not only that, but there was a community on the other side of the lake that didn't want Jesus or his disciples around. So that explains a bit of the context in Mark chapter 6. But as we look at this story and we read about this man who's crying out in the tombs, I wonder when I read passages like this, what was his childhood like? This demon-possessed man that we only know by Legion. I wonder what his family was like. At what age did symptoms start to manifest? I wonder these things because I've worked at length with youth and adults in the inner city who remind me of this man. For a number of years before entering church ministry, I served in urban ministry in Philadelphia and low-income communities in Toronto, and I remember youth who would remind me of Legion. I remember this one kid, his name was Kevin. And when Kevin was a junior high, he came into my program, and Kevin was unruly. There was nobody who could subdue him. He was oftentimes acting out of his hurt and his anger and his pain in program. We would have interns who would come and serve as missionaries from all over the world, and I knew how difficult Kevin was. To be honest with you this afternoon, he would grind my last nerve sometimes. I encountered a lot of youth who were too difficult, and families that were in crisis because of their behavior, because of what was going on at home. When I heard about Kevin's home situation, how his brother was dealing drugs, got arrested and put in prison, how his dad was a crack cocaine addict and started to use again and left the family and abandoned them and was downtown doing drugs, and he was being raised by a single mom, and his older brothers were in and out of jail. Started to have a bit of compassion for Kevin's situation. But he was a hard kid, he was a difficult kid, and much like the story of this man in this passage, no matter what we tried, we couldn't get through to him. It just seemed like every attempt that we made to control his behavior, he would continually act out, and he would strategize ways to get under our skin and push us away from him. He was a difficult young man to be working with. And so when I read these accounts, I wonder about this family. What was it like when this man was younger and in a family in himself? You know, when he was a child, did he look at his adult years and did he ever imagine that this would be his station in life? Wandering amongst the tombs, cutting himself, crying out night and day because he is possessed by demons. And I wonder, at what point did this family crisis start to become the community's problem? At what point did this man start to create mischief within the larger neighborhood? And how did the family feel when they were approached and said, your son or your teenager or your young adult child, they are driving us crazy. He continues to be uncontrollable. We learn about the community's response in the first few verses. Maybe they started with an assessment. Maybe they met with the man and tried to diagnose what was wrong with him. Maybe they tried to medicate and subdue him. But when that didn't work, they went from medication to incarceration, we learn in the first few verses. We learn that they were able to subdue him at one point, but then he had grown worse and worse, no matter how hard they tried to contain the problem known as Legion. it continued to grow. They used to be able to manage him, but now he's completely unmanageable. And we're told in other accounts of this event that he had become so violent that you couldn't even pass through that area because legion dominated through this man. And eventually this whole neighborhood was exhausted. They tried everything they could. They couldn't subdue or hold down legion anymore. And this man is isolated and alone. He has been harmed by others because we're told many times he was beaten and chained and subdued. He's been harmed by others. He's harmed himself. We're told in the passage that he started to cut himself because he's in so much pain. Night and day in his isolation, he would cry out amongst the tombs. And lastly, he's been harmed by Satan himself. He is filled with demons. Satan owns this man. Living among the tombs, he's physically alive, but for all intents purposes, he is practically dead. And as Jesus gets out of the boat, he is confronted by the man. Look at verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." Now we know that Legion is the one who is actually speaking to Jesus at that moment. But I also wonder sometimes, is this also the cry of the man himself? I wonder how much of the man still had his mind fixed on what was happening. Did he run before Jesus and say to Jesus, "Please, please don't torture me. I've been through so much. The community doesn't know what to do with me. They've already beaten me. They've already chained me up. I know I'm the problem. They've subdued me. They've tried to control me. And no matter how hard they try, it's not working. Please, Jesus, don't add to the list of torture that I've already been through." When I read these accounts and some of the work I did for 18 years, I know that's the cry of some young people in the inner city. Medication's not working. Incarceration isn't getting any better. It's not fixing the problem. You know, I wonder when this man ran full speed towards Jesus, and we're told in other accounts that he's not wearing any clothing, so he is not a sight to behold. He probably has cuts all over his arm. We can only imagine what he looks like. He's probably completely unkept. Tattered hair, maybe dreadlocks for every year that nobody knew his name. And he runs towards Jesus and says, "Don't torture me." How did the disciples respond when they encountered this man as they got out of the boat? Did they jump behind Jesus? Did they look at him with horror? You see, sometimes people are so lost, their condition and their state so broken, that we can get to a place where we cease to see the humanity of the other person. We no longer see the man, we only see the condition. We only see the outer wrapping. We no longer see the human being, we just see the problem. We just see the label, the diagnosis. See, that's the thing I love about Jesus. When he comes, a community has banished this man to the tombs to live out his days in solitary confinement. He's as good as dead among the graves. But Jesus looks at the man and sees that his symptoms aren't simply social, although there were social implications to his behavior. Jesus looks at the man and sees the spiritual condition. You see, the problem was the community around Legion was trying to solve a spiritual problem with social sciences. You cannot solve spiritual problems with social sciences. Now, let me state a qualifier here. We know more about the brain than we've ever known. And I believe mental health is real and that some social sciences are necessary and helpful to young people, to adults who are wrestling with these things. I'm not saying that it doesn't have any relevance to certain situations, but in the situation in Mark chapter 5, and certainly in other lives I've seen in the inner city, the social sciences can only go so far. Sometimes there is a spiritual problem at the core which social sciences cannot solve. They can diagnose it, they can describe it, but they are powerless to solve it. They can medicate it and subdue it, but sometimes if it grows worse, they cannot solve and bind it and hold it down anymore. And then our solution becomes incarceration. Jesus looks beyond the rough exterior when he encounters Legion to the interior condition and calls out to the impure spirit. "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" Verse 9, "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." Legion is not a name, it's a number. In Jesus' day, a Roman legion consisted of about 6,000 soldiers. We don't know exactly how many demons are in this man, but there must be a multitude, thousands of demons in this one man. His life has become spiritual darkness all around him. And you notice throughout the Gospels that whenever Jesus encountered the demonic, Jesus is never afraid. Have you ever noticed that in the Gospels? Whenever Jesus enters onto the scene, it's always the demons who are afraid. The demons beg Jesus to send them among the pigs, and Jesus allows them to go into them. He gave them permission, we are told in verse 13. The spiritual realm is subject to his authority. How does the community respond when this takes place? Something dramatic has just happened. Jesus comes onto the scene, and he doesn't apply social sciences. He uses spiritual authority to heal this man and set him free from what was possessing him. And the people who were standing there are so impressed, they run to the surrounding villages, town, and countryside. And we're told in verse 15, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. The community that had tried so many solutions, when they found out what had happened, run to the scene, and when they see the man sitting there, you would think that they would be happy. You would think finally Legion doesn't reign and rule over this man anymore, but for so long they never saw the man. They only saw the problem. They only saw the diagnosis. They only saw the symptoms. That when they see this man sitting in his right mind, fully clothed again, his shame covered by Christ, they look at Jesus and they're afraid. I wonder why. Maybe they're thinking to themselves, if Legion was powerful and we couldn't subdue him, and now one more powerful than Legion is here, man, this is bad news. We need to get rid of this Jesus because he seems really powerful. Nobody could control Legion. But then this man with one word spoken gives him permission to go into the pigs. This community doesn't celebrate the awakening that's just taken place in this man, his shame covered by Christ, his life restored, a spiritual solution finally applied to his life, and they are afraid, and they beg Jesus to leave. And I was telling you about the story of Kevin. All of a sudden, one day, in a moment, Christ pierced through into his heart. And I don't know that I've seen a more dramatic change in a young man's life. I remember sitting with him in a Bible study when he was about 16 years old. He had become a Christian, and we were doing a Bible study, and we asked the question to the young people that we were studying with, what drew you to Jesus? What was it that drew you to a relationship with him? And Kevin mumbled an answer in the corner. I said to him, Kevin, please explain. What did you say? And he said the word acceptance. Acceptance is what drew me to Jesus. And then he said this, I'll never forget this. When I was 13 years old, when I was a young man, I used to go home and strategize ways to get under your guy's skin. What kind of sick junior high does that? He said, I would literally try and chart out ways to swear at you guys and call you names and get under your skin and make you cry. I enjoyed it. He said, but you guys kept loving me. You kept coming. And somehow you just saw me. And as you loved me and cared for me, I knew at that moment that Jesus would accept me no matter what happened in my life, that he would accept me completely in the state and condition that I was in. It was acceptance that drew me to Jesus. And then I gave my life to him. And it's never been the same since. Amen. This 16-year-old kid from the inner city who everybody looked as a problem, this kid who had a legion of labels on his life, was one of the most theologically profound statements I've ever heard. It was his acceptance, his kindness, his love that drew me into a relationship with him. And so by the end of the text, this man's life has been transformed, and the community doesn't want Jesus around. They try to send him away, and Jesus obliges. Jesus begins to get into the boat with his disciples. He's leaving the region, and the man who was possessed by legion comes up to him, and he tries to go with him, and Jesus didn't let him in verse 19. It seems pretty cold, doesn't it? The guy wants to go with you. You've just transformed his life. You've just clothed his shame. He could be the next apostle. He certainly could be a disciple. Why don't you let him go, Jesus? But Jesus has another plan. Jesus says to him in verse 19, go home. Go to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Jesus commissions this man into ministry. He commissions him to testify how much the Lord God has done for him. And the man, true to form, in verse 20, we are told, went away and began to tell in the Decapolis, a massive region, how much Jesus had done for him. This is the most unlikely missionary you will discover in the New Testament. Nobody would have looked at Legion, who's running around naked, terrorizing the community, and said, that man is going to be a missionary one day. Jesus takes the ordinary, maybe even the extraordinarily possessed, and transforms them into kingdom builder, extraordinary missionaries. My life was messed up. I was harmed by others. I was harming myself. There was voices in my head. Everything was crazy. But then this man came and he asked my name. He saw me. And he drove out all the darkness. He healed all the hurt, all the pain. He's done so much for me. It was so much kindness, so much acceptance. His love just seemed to flow through me. His name is Jesus. In Mark chapter 6, to come full circle, when Jesus forces his disciples to get into the boat, and he says, go up to Bethsaida, right by where they ran into Legion. The disciples don't want to go. They're afraid. They get halfway there. They're straining at the oars. Nothing's working out. Jesus walks out onto the water. He says, what? Take courage. Don't you know who you're with? It is the I am. Your sufficiency, everything you need. Don't be afraid. Let's go to the end of Mark chapter 6 as they sail to Bethsaida, not far from where they encountered Legion. They go off course, they land at Gennesaret, they anchor there. And in verse 54 of Mark 6, we read this: as soon as they got out of the boat, was it Legion who greeted them? No, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. Why is the community seemingly so excited to get to Jesus now? Because Legion's been walking around and telling what's been happening. Jesus turns the ordinary into something extraordinary, but he's the extraordinary. Nothing can heal spiritual problems but Jesus alone. He is the only hope for our world and its brokenness, not social sciences, although they have their place, not our best efforts to manage behavior. It is a heart issue, a transformation from the inside out. And what we see in these passages is that the great I am, the one who is and always will be, the one who is with us to the end of the age, is able to transform lives. And maybe you're here this afternoon and you have a loved one, or even in your own life, you've been trying to apply social solutions to a spiritual challenge. No matter how hard you try, something that you've been able to subdue in the past just keeps popping up, just keeps coming. And maybe again, there's that moment where we need to meet with Jesus. We need to get in that quiet place and we need to hear him speak into our ears. Take courage. It is I am. Don't be afraid, because he never draws these things out of us to harm us, but only to heal us.
The Dead Sea sits at 1,300 feet below sea level and is the lowest point of dry land on Earth. This inland lake is rich in mineral deposits and is 8 times saltier than the ocean. People travel from all over the world to take in its healing properties and float in its waters. But the harsh environment means fish cannot survive. It is mentioned in the Bible mainly as a land boundary, but Ezekiel prophesied that one day a river would make the salt water fresh and fishermen would spread their nets along the shore.
I'd like to personally invite you to join me and the Living Truth family for an unforgettable experience as we explore the Rhine River in Germany. From September 10th to the 22nd, 2020, we'll cruise the historic Rhine River aboard our very own, privately chartered Living Truth riverboat. We're calling this trip Awaken 2020, the Passion Play. Imagine a 12-day journey set in one of the most beautiful parts of the world, surrounded by a rich fellowship of like-minded travelers. Your faith will be ignited through new community and a fresh encounter with our God. Our trip concludes with a 2-day visit to the picturesque village of Oberammergau, Germany, nestled in the Bavarian Alps. If you're a returning traveler or a first-timer, we guarantee this will be an experience you will never forget.
Don't miss this incredible trip of a lifetime. Awaken 2020, a Rhine River boat cruise and the Passion Play.
To reserve your spot now, simply visit myawakenjourney.com for details or call 1-877-465-3442. Awaken 2020, the Passion Play. It's your time.
I encourage you not to miss this opportunity. Please join me and the Living Truth family on this amazing adventure.
Stepping into the land that Jesus knew so well and walking where he walked has been an incredible experience. It brings to life the words and accounts of the Bible in a whole new way and inspires us to live lives that are worthy of him. We're so glad that you've joined us on this special journey and pray that you will keep following in the footsteps of the King. Join us next time for more clear biblical teaching on Living Truth.
To watch this message again, visit our website. Download transcripts, order DVDs and CDs, as well as our daily devotional, or sign up for our monthly newsletter. Online, you can sign up for podcasts. You can also join us on Facebook and YouTube. Join us next week for a new series from Brett McBride called Resolve and a message titled, You Reap What You Sow. This is Living Truth.